Dr. Rinaldi, let's start with you. Are parents, in fact, more inundated now with information than ever before? And if so, is that a good thing or is that a bad thing?
Well, I think certainly that there's so much information out there and access to, so that could be seen as a good thing because the topic of parenting is very important, and they can access things through social media, through books, the internet, you name it. So, of course, there's many more avenues than ever before for parents to get that information.
Not everyone buys into the more extreme forms of parenting, Judy, that have been suggested by some of late. But is there a danger in being overwhelmed by the multitude of techniques that are being suggested out there?
I think definitely parents are overwhelmed by the amount of information and definitely by the extreme examples of parenting shown on the media. And what we hear from parents in our classes is that it tends to make them not want to seek out any information at all, which is not the ideal either. And also it has a side effect of undermining their confidence, because every parent needs some basic information on child development, but they also need to trust in themselves and their ability to look at common sense ways of parenting.
Do you risk losing focus on what's maybe logical for your family?
I think generally parents do come to a point where they say enough's enough, I'm just going to do what works. So they tend to turn away from the information. And you can find anything on the internet to support whatever parenting style. But I think they do come to a point many years later that this is what works for our family. I'm just not going to listen to anything more and just do what works for us.
Do you risk confusing the kids, Christina? If as a parent, you're going to the internet and you're finding all different types of techniques and you start applying some of this at home, does that pose a problem for the kids?
Well, I think consistency is really important in parenting. I mean, typically being warm and responsive, but also limit setting and parameters, knowing what to expect in the environment is something that's very positive. Positive for kids, positive for parents as well. And if you're switching that routine or whatever the environment is too often, then I think that, yes, you probably end up confusing, making kids a little bit more apprehensive of what are the expectations. So consistency, I would say, is really important.
Judy, has parenting in fact changed that much to the point where we are at right now?
Definitely.
For instance, it doesn't seem like it was that long ago that spanking, sorry for interrupting, but spanking was an accepted form of discipline in the home. It's frowned upon now.
Well, parenting has changed for many reasons. First of all is that we have more information, we have more research, we have, especially in the field of brain development and the effects of stress on children and parents, but also the fact that our demographics have changed as parents have fewer children, as academic achievement is more highly valued in our society. The pressure is higher on parents to do it right, and there's many, many ways to do it right and a few ways not to do it right, but definitely parenting has changed. And coupled with that is all the information on what to do. So it has changed, and especially in the area of spanking, we know more now about how spanking affects children and raises certain risk factors. But not often that information is getting out to parents.
As parents, we're going to the bookstore, we're buying how many ever books, spending a lot of money on it, going to the internet. But Christina, whatever happened to, as parents, going to our own mothers and fathers for seeking parenting advice? Has that fallen by the wayside?
Not completely, but I think what we are seeing today is that families are living differently than they might have even a century ago, where communities were really involved in, you've heard that term about it takes a village to parent children or to raise a child. Well, that kind of concept was that everybody was really involved and saw it as a community expectation, but also something that everybody contributed to. Now we live more isolated in many ways, and it's not unusual for parents and families to go from one thing to another. So with regards to getting parenting advice, absolutely parents ask their own parents or other parents, but that can have its own positive and negative pieces because they might feel pressure, they might feel being judged by others when they are asking for advice. So it doesn't come necessarily without some of that additional baggage, I suppose.
Judy, has the loss of that community aspect of raising a child, has that been detrimental to the process of parenting?
I think so. I think the fact that parents are more isolated nowadays tends to make them a bit more defensive on their parenting, and certainly society heaves more judgment on parents, and that can really make things worse for parents in that they don't know where to turn to for help. They can find a lot of information out there, but is it credible? Is it researched information? In parenting classes, parents tend to go to prenatal classes and they go to university orientation. But anything in between is still stigmatized as, well, if I go to a class, I'm viewed as having a problem. And we don't want to be judged as having problems. Yet, parenting can be very proactive. Most parents don't have formal classes in child development, and certainly not in biology classes in high school. So where do they learn that basic information when, most of us are going to become parents and need that information to make good decisions and for our children?
The Alberta government has invested in the model of method of triple P parenting, provides free advice. There are parent link centers. Should we keep that in mind as parents, that there's a place to turn?
I think in our communities there are a lot of good resources, and I think the point that was made earlier is that there are decades of research that really points to what can be detrimental to children, but also what has been working and what is positive. And I had mentioned before being warm and responsive at the same time as perhaps communicating expectations to kids along the whole developmental span. The point that was raised earlier as well, that we really focus on the early years or prenatal, and then at university level for that orientation piece, we're really good at giving biological information or what to expect in the early years, and we're getting better, but that information can be accessed out there on other kinds of developmental stages, like what to expect with toddlers, and then when you're starting school, and parents are involved the whole way along. So those resources that are out there, I think I see as a positive thing, but I really do encourage for parents to make use of the supports that they have that can help them figure out what is worth their time and what isn't.
Judy, I think there are probably some parents out there right now asking, is there in fact a right way and is there a wrong way to parent? Are you able to answer that?
Well, what I tend to tell parents is there are many, many right ways to parent and a few not so good ways. As Christina said, in parenting styles, there's about 5 categories of parenting styles based on that axis of nurturing and warmth, and also expectations and boundaries. And for about 70% of the time, if you meet in the middle, you're doing well. And nobody can be 100% perfect parent. And sometimes we have those expectations for ourselves, but it's not realistic. Nor can we have perfect children, and that's okay. It's okay to go out there and ask for help on normative parenting problems, because everybody has those issues.
One very last quick question, Christina. Is there a way to gauge success as being a successful parent?
Well, I think...
just happiness in the home?
Yeah, that's right. If you have happy parents and...
happy kids.
You have happy kids, yeah, absolutely. But I think also expectations for parents themselves, what is reasonable without putting too much pressure on themselves. going to the supermarket when everybody's hungry and tired, probably the biggest setup ever. And so even just choosing what can you realistically expect. And then I think they will experience more and more success, and that breeds confidence as well.
I greatly appreciate your input tonight. As a parent, I'm very thankful to get it as well. Thank you kindly. Dr. Christina Rinaldi is a developmental psychologist and professor of educational psychology at the University of Alberta, and Judy Arnall is an author and parenting expert with Professional Parenting Canada.